just so excited. Oh, we did? Okay, great. I'd like to call for order the Conservation Advisory Council for the town of Niskayuna. This is the July 1st, 2026 meeting.
Laura, I can't hear.
Oh, is your microphone on?
No,
Oh.
my microphone's not on. Thank you,
Thanks,
Clark.
Clark.
I'll start again. This is the Conservation Advisory Council, and this is the July 1st, 2026 meeting, and I'd like to call it to order. Laura, could you please call the roll?
Okay. Online we have Clark Henry, and in person we have Dan McPherson, Portia Zwicker, Chuck Petrowski, our newest member Larry Weintraub, thank you, and Chairman Dart Strayer.
Okay, great. At this time, I'd like to just have Larry say a few words to us and tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe your background and why you're here.
Okay, well, I'm.
Wait, you got to turn on your mic.
Oh,
So we,
sorry.
yeah.
Okay, I got to get used to this. I think this is the first board, no, it's the second board I've ever been on in my life. I'm delighted to be here. I'm delighted that I was appointed to the Conservation Advisory Council. I've lived in Niskayuna since 2004. So I've been thinking a lot about Niskayuna since then, since I moved here. And importantly, I just retired from the DEC. I was their secret counsel and permitting counsel for 18 and a half years. And before that, I used to teach land use law for 7 years. And then before that, I was practicing attorney, representing boards, suing boards, doing everything with boards. But I never sat on a board except for a non-profit board. So I was always curious about, I always thought it would be interesting to be in that position of having to make decisions rather than advising on decisions. And I think it's a lot tougher. During the course of being at DEC, I was asked to be a witness, and instead of being the attorney, I was a witness, and I thought this is a different position. So I'm thinking the same thing about it's a different way to view the world. And so thank you again for having me.
We're glad to have you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Welcome. Okay. We have a lot of minutes to approve. Are we ready to do this?
Yep.
Okay. January 7th minutes. 2026. Does anybody have any comments on them?
I have a request,
Yeah.
an amendment, line 203, to change Mr. to Miss.
Okay.
For me, this is Mr. Zwicker. Thanks.
Any other?
Yeah, this is just a general comment, I guess, but it's really from January 7th, line 144. It's just a very awkward sentence. And just for the record, I do want to say that we are using, or there appears to be, the use of generative AI in this process. And we just need to be more aware of the generative component of AI putting into our minutes. So I think for everyone present, reviewing these minutes with more of a critical eye than me personally, reviewing these with a more critical eye will be in our best interest for the next couple months, because there's a couple, so line 144 was a bit awkward in the 17. And let me just, yeah, Ms. Robertson has a technical question for the environmental assessment, because this site could be peregrine falcon territory. So she's asking the question of the assessment, I guess. But anyway, there's a couple of those things throughout. But and also in 17 we have Matt Savoy, SAVOIE, and in 24 he's SAVOI. I'm not sure which one is correct. Yeah, thank you.
And then Ellen emailed me just a couple small things on line 118, me to be 129. I'm just going to check the conversation about hostile bees. And then 160 needs the addition of the word so. So I'll add all those into it.
Okay. Any others? Okay, I'd entertain a motion to adopt the minutes with the changes.
Second.
Motion to adopt?
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 The motion carries. Okay,
Did you wanna-
February
Larry,
2nd.
did you want to abstain?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, Larry will abstain. Yeah. Okay, February?
yeah, February 2nd. Any comments on the February 2nd meeting? Notes?
Yes, I have another one for, this is line 264 of the February 4th meeting. Let me catch up with it. Okay, there it is. Said Mr. Petrowski would continue working alongside them over the next 2 months to advance the initiative. And it was tacked onto a sentence that relating to the town's attorney office and an updated referral from the CAC. That is simply incorrect. The 2 months of work was with the Canal Corporation regarding low mow and not related to a referral to the Water, Sewer, and Engineering Committee.
Any other comments on the February 4th meetings?
Ellen just wants to reword line 74, add the word strict to line 78, and just look at line 71, or sorry, line 131. She thinks it's the same wording that needs to be fixed as line 74.
I make a motion to adopt the minutes as amended. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 The motion carries. There's one abstention, and it's Larry. Okay.
Hmm.
All right, March 4th.
Yep, me again.
Okay,
To correct the record, I was not present. So line 11 is incorrect, but line 20 is correct. And therefore, I will abstain from approving the minutes.
okay. Any other comments? Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes. Do we have a second?
Second?
All in favor, say aye. The
Aye.
motion carries, but Chuck and Larry are abstaining.
Okay, you probably want to say any opposed and any
Any opposed?
abstentions.
Okay. That's so the AI can get it. Okay. All right, let's go to the April 1st.
Okay. In April 1st, I have line 38 and 39. It should be NYPA instead of NYSPA. And I believe there was also reference as NIPA at some point, because we say NIPA and the transcript writes NIPA. But anyway, New York Power Authority, the common acronym is NYPA, also pronounced NIPA. Line 41, it says the canal system is 424 miles. That is incorrect. It's 524 miles. And that's it.
Okay, and Ellen noted lines 95 through 118. She just wants to make sure that that belongs before the discussion of the LOMO. So I'll just go listen to the video and double check that.
Okay, any other comments? Somebody want to make a motion?
Motion to adopt?
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I abstain.
Okay,
I wasn't there.
so Portia and Larry have abstained. Okay, next one, May 6th. I do have some comments on the May 6th. So line 98, there's a sentence that says walk occurred prior to the May 15th, the canal navigation opening. I don't think that's relevant for, that was just added in. That
What
was
line?
not. Line
97.
97, 98. I have another one on line 105. It says B-shaped. It should be bowl-shaped.
Mhm.
And then line 160. Wait a minute, I gotta get there. I'm just trying to. No, it's okay. All right, I have no other.
I just have one. I didn't watch the video, but line 42, I don't think that was me. My memory's not the greatest, but I think that was Dart.
Okay.
I don't recall asking about the canal or the footprint, but I remember that came up. It says it was me.
It could have been me, actually. It wasn't you.
I don't think it was me. No.
Right.
We can say a question was raised.
Yeah, so I can go check the video on
Yeah,
that.
okay.
It could be that Dottie's still learning, you guys, so she might have attributed the wrong name.
Okay. Did Ellen have any comments?
Yes, May, line 62 needs the word how, and line 174, she just wants to check the list of requests.
All right, I make a motion to adopt the May 6th minutes as modified.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Note the record, Larry has abstained. Okay, let's move on to the June 3rd.
All right. Line 218, the word is sweet, should be site.
28. Oh, you're going to give them to me.
Yeah, I'll give them to you. And then line 234, okay, it says Chairman Strayer data mapped that the project fails to satisfy the recreation objectives of the 2013 comprehensive plan, ... I think data mapped is the wrong term.
Yeah. What number is that?
That is 234. Line 234, excuse me.
I think I was brain dead by the time. I
Maybe you were busy data mapping at the time. It could be.
234.
Yeah. I don't know what sounds like the term data mapped, but clearly, maybe we'll just check the.
I think we
recording.
should check.
Yeah,
that thing.
but I'm sure it was something very astute, intelligent, and worthy of
Yeah. Oh,
correction in the record.
Laura, you on the May 6th
Mhm.
on line 147.
Yeah.
I would strike surprised. I don't think I was surprised.
Okay. Strike.
And that's on the previous one we just approved. Okay. Line 69 in June. Obviously, I don't know what I'm talking about. But at 113, we had J Street. We were talking about J Dog and or
right.
Jackson Demolition. Is that actually J Street? I thought that was not the name of the street.
Wait, 113.
We talked about those two developments, and I'm wondering if J Dog got changed to J Street.
The northern parcel slated for donation to the town contains the canal. What do you? Yeah, that should be Anthony Street.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I think it was J Dog was also in there. We had concerns about their debris or their salvage, and we wanted them to put it in containers, right?
That was Jackson Demolition.
Oh, that's Jackson.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
J Dog, I think we They
Their
didn't
stuff is-
store anything on site.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. Let's see, 163, we mentioned Keeler. I would strike historic and change Keeler to Kia.
Mhm.
And I think we had, and you need to check this, other projects. So it was the dealership and other projects that we had the buffer on. So let me get there. So I think the sentence, he noted that while the town enforced strict buffers on Kia vehicle dealership project and others, or other projects, no such protections were established here on this registered historic site.
Okay.
And that does it for me. Are there any other comments? Okay, I'll make a motion that we adopt the minutes as modified.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? One abstention, and that's Larry. Normally, we do not have this many minutes to
Yeah.
approve.
That's because they got really behind on them.
Okay, privilege of the floor. So we have someone who would like to speak to us. So, John, come up. Make sure you turn on the mic and just introduce yourself and give us your address, and the floor is yours.
Is the mic on?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. I have two comments. First off, I heard Ashok give a talk at Rotary International earlier this week on conservation and biodiversity, and it was pretty incredible, I thought. He's giving a similar, perhaps slightly extended talk to the Union College Academy of Lifelong Learning this fall. Those are two, special audiences. I think it would be really great if the town, the planning department, CAC could promote or sponsor him to talk townwide, because a lot of the values he's espousing are fundamental to what the CAC is all about. I mentioned it to him. He said, just send me an email. One of 100, he says he gets. But anyway, the second comment has to do with a discussion that the CAC had, I think maybe at the last meeting. I sat in on that. It was about a planned urban, is it PUD? Okay, along the river. When I first heard about that, I thought it was a great idea. It'd be nice to have more housing right on the river. I've been in my house now for 45 years. I'm looking to downsize, so it got my attention. However, I thought that the density was awfully high at that location. And I've talked to a couple of residents in the area, and they weren't even aware of this. One of the residents lives in that other PUD just upriver. She complained about the light pollution from that development, and also traffic. That one affects me personally because I travel down Balltown Road heading north about 3-4 times a week, and it is really tough during rush hour to make a left-hand turn into the JCC. The only time there's a break typically is when the light up on across the river changes, right? Maybe some of you have experienced that. But if that development goes on this side of the river, those people are going to be shooting onto Balltown Road to fill that space that would enable people like me to make that turn. So I think that the traffic needs to be looked at perhaps more carefully than it has been. I didn't hear that particular problem come up. I looked at Google Earth earlier today, and I saw what looked like a pretty nice forested riparian buffer along the river. And it's been broken in a few places, and it's, I don't know if it's really appropriate for the town of Niskuna to break it up even further. Another thing I've done recently is I've become a certified forest owner volunteer. I took a course from Cornell and have really become sensitive to all the values that forests have for us. So I'm concerned about that development from an aesthetic standpoint. I don't know if you can care what it looks like from the other side of the river, even though it's out of town. Is that something that's considered? I think I heard somebody say on the EAF that there was not going to be water quality impact or air quality impact. Maybe not significant, but there will be impacts, which maybe with further study, you can quantify that. My background's in geology and hydrogeology, and I heard about changes in stormwater management, and they're changing a depression, which is I guess, somewhat, I don't know if it's a part-time pond or a full-time pond there, but they're going to make it into a stormwater basin. I heard a reference to water table. I did not hear a reference to what the water table fluctuations are or to how they got their data for how deep the water table is. Because if they use the NRCS data, that's notoriously generalized. There should be site-specific data to find out what the fluctuations are. If they're going to have a basin there and they expect to fill it with like cloudbursts we just had just now. So those are the technical issues. I also found it ironic, as I mentioned at the last of my last meeting, when we have a new town logo that shows the river and trees along it, and now we're cutting down the trees. And Governor Hochul wants us to plant 25 million trees this year, and Niskayuna is cutting them down, although the Tree Council helps offset that. It just seemed a little bit ironic to me. So anyway, thank you.
Thanks, John. Do we have any more comments, Laura, that we've received, or is anybody online?
No, we don't have any emails or anybody online
Okay.
with additional comments.
Okay, let's move to the EAF, and we have one, and that is EAF 2025-01. This is 2757 Aqueduct Road, Niskayuna Harbor. We have seen this development multiple times. It's a PUD development that the developer has provided a sketch plan. It, hold on one second. It sits on a 41 acre site. There are wetlands on the property. 7 acres are jurisdictional, 2 acres are non-jurisdictional. And it's also a PFOIA, a significant portion of land is designated as that, which is a deciduous seasonal flooding. There's a lot of wetlands. The site is also bisected by the Erie Canal bed, and that is designated as a national landmark, and it's also a historic structure. We have the bike path to the south, and we have a trolley bed to the east, and that travels along the Balltown Road area and then curves towards the river on the eastern side of the property and travels north. The developer has proposed giving the town land on the north, and that includes everything north of the canal bed. A lot of that land is wetlands, and it is in a 100-year floodplain. And hold on one second. The developer has proposed 152 units. There are 4-unit buildings that total 84 units. There are 4 townhouses that are 20 units, and there are 8-unit buildings, which are 48 units. Laura, would you like to provide any additional details about this project?
Yeah, so I know Larry introduced himself, but I wanted to say for the record, he also met with Clark and I to come up to speed on this project. But we'll just go, we just wanted to go over and highlight the basics to put it on the record. And, he let me know that he'd also read the environmental assessment form and, is able to read through some of the older stuff and kind of really dig into this project. So I think he's comfortable voting tonight. So, and then, so Chairman Strayer did make those updates. This is the most recent plan. It does show one entrance coming off of Aqueduct Road. This is adjacent to River's Ledge. And the entrance comes down, crosses the Mohawk Hudson Bike Hike Trail here, if you can see my, and then it comes down. The town has tried to find ways to get access to the river. They put a public parking lot down here. Yeah, here's the clustering of the 4-unit buildings that Dart Strayer had mentioned, Chairman Strayer, and then the 8-unit buildings. There is a proposed clubhouse with a playground next to it. It's pretty small. We've noted that before. And then there's a trail that goes along the road and between the road and the pond where they propose to put signage and maybe some biodiverse plantings along the pond, like slope down to the pond if they could. And then they do have an emergency connection to River's Ledge over here. The red are the proposed trails, which the town board is concerned about maintenance of, but generally speaking, I think are okay with the land being conveyed to the town, just trying to work through how the trails would work. The thing that comes up a lot for us, a real big concern, is the stormwater detention ponds, like embedded inside the wetlands. You can see that here. Some of the things that we've talked about before that I've talked about is how close these buildings are to the 25-foot buffer and how in previous developments, when it's been close, like not as close as this, but still close, we've really had an issue with enforcement and degradation and pushing against that buffer, just human nature. So, so the buffer is written on these plans here. And Larry, did you have any questions you wanted me to cover?
Yeah, well,
Just make sure you speak into the mic so we can.
That one, yeah.
so just on the map, can you just sort of point out where the detention basins
Oh,
are?
sure. Yeah. The detention base. So the wetlands is the crosshatched areas. And then the detention ponds are these areas that have the topo lines dropping down. So one here, embedded inside this wetland. And then 2 here.
I see, so they're sort of sandwiched into in the wetland area?
Yeah, exactly. And then there's one down here. The developer did note that they are adding these bioretention, like pre-treatment areas between the buildings that would help, I think, filter out pollutants and stuff before the water got to the proposed stormwater management basins here. They do outfall into the canal here. So the water would kind of flow through the stormwater basins and then come out into the existing wetland and go down into the canal bed.
And so I think we talked about this, but are there calculations to show how all of this would work if there were like a big storm? My other question is, I thought I read in the EAF that all of this is in the 100-foot floodplain.
So we don't have the calculations of the stormwater yet. I think that's one of the issues that's really
Yeah.
come up
We've
for the.
raised that issue, the CAC, multiple times with the developer. And I think what they would like to do is they would like to do that later. And they have not provided any details about water flows from impervious areas. If you look at the site, it's hard to see on this one, but the topo lines, the site is very flat. I've walked on it. It's sort of a bowl shaped. And if you look at the water gardens between the buildings, some of them, like the ones, if you scroll to the west of the site, yeah, keep on scrolling. Right in between those rows of buildings, scroll a little bit more.
Yeah, you should get rid of that.
That water garden there is at the same elevation as the wetlands, the jurisdictional wetlands. And it's really hard to, without elevation, how that is actually going to work. The other issue is that if you look at the retention ponds where the wetlands are, adjacent to the wetlands, those are actually like slightly higher than the wetlands. But if you're going to actually do that, you're gonna have to dig down in order to get the water flow and or if you line them. So, it's really unclear how that is going to be developed.
It's unclear how the water will actually go into the
Yeah,
detention
yeah.
basins.
Yeah, there has been no calculations and no other than what you see here. This is what we have.
And if the water table is really high, will it just fill up easily and then you get a huge storm and the whole place will be flooded?
Yeah.
Or-
I think there's a couple concerns with that. So they had a biologist look at the site. And the water table is between 6 inches and 18 inches from the surface. And 18 inches below the surface is a fragipan layer, which is basically an impervious layer. So there's a lot of water that sits on top. And the challenge is if you just dig a retention pond, it's going to fill up. But if you line it, that also has implications too. And it's unclear how either of those will work. in this
What would be
particular-
the implications if you want?
I think you also have the potential of impacting the water table. You also,
So the impact of lining it, and I'm not an expert on this, but I think this is
Yeah.
one of the reasons that the CAC has been leaning towards that. Without more detail, it really seems like there could be a moderate or large impact to the hydraulic because we just don't have that
yeah,
detail.
we
But
just don't have that.
the lining of the basins can cause hydraulic mounding.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
I think that, if lining is proposed, then you have to look at how that is going to impact the existing hydrology of the remaining wetlands.
I'm sorry, I don't have this all at my fingertips. Yeah, and the other problem with the way the designation is, these wetlands are adjacent to the canal. The canal is adjacent to the Mohawk River, so it's really important that we maintain the quality of those wetlands. And if you look at the concentration of the retention ponds there, they're going to collect all the pesticides, the heavy metals, the salt. And when they do flow over, that's going to get concentrated in that wetlands. And then also you're taking all the water on that property and you're focusing it in that one outfall into the canal.
Right.
And there's concern of what the erosion is to that bed and what's going to happen to that erosion. Because currently now, some of the wetlands, basically the water flows in, but it percolates through the soil. And most of those wetlands are on the western side of that parcel, and it's going to be filled in. So that water has to go somewhere. It's probably a long-winded answer to your question.
No. I'm just, no, I'm glad I read the EAF and I read some of the minutes and I was scratching my head about
Yeah.
thinking like, how is this all going to work with this much impervious surface?
Mhm.
That it's in
Yeah.
the floodplain and it's, so are there any issues on the other side of the road? There's a part of a development on the other side of the road?
So I just wanted to answer the 100-year flood
Yeah, go
question
ahead.
before you go on. It's mostly not in the 100-year floodplain. The 100-year floodplain is this black boundary here, and the areas that are in the floodplain are on the other side of the Erie Canal. So, the site kind of like Aqueduct is the highest point, then it drops down to these townhouses, then it crosses the bike path, then it drops down, I think, a little to this middle area, which Chairman Strayer is saying is pretty flat, which is probably why it has a lot of wetlands, then drops down to the old Erie Canal bed, and then drops down to the river because the old Erie Canal bed was actually higher than the river.
So the other side of the Erie Canal.
So on the other side of the Erie Canal bed,
There's a
this
bank on the other side, so.
is
there's
all
a-
100,
There's
yeah.
a dip in
So this
that
would be
area,
like
that's a
in the
canal bed.
500-year floodplain?
It I think the 500-year floodplain for the Mohawk isn't hugely different than the 100-year. It's probably still on the other side of the canal. I was looking at
Yeah, the bank seems to be, the bank, at least where I walked the canal, was high. So there's a deposit and then it comes back up and then it's high on the other side and then it drops off. And as you go into that floodplain, it becomes almost like a sand beach. And it's basically a muck. I did not have boots on when I walked the site. But you know, it's a really wonderful estuary site. And I did go into the canal bed part of the way, and the water quality is very high. It's actually really the water is very clear. I would even question whether all that is continuous. There might be some vernal ponds in there, but we don't know that for a fact. And it was wet in the spring, but you know, further down, if those connections get broken, they would qualify as vernal ponds, and that would require other buffers. So one of the concerns that we've had is that the Canal Corp controls that area. So there's a different jurisdiction site. So it's unclear how holistic the site was viewed overall.
And-
Go ahead, Chuck.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I don't know if this was in the calculations, well, for the 100-year flood, but as you can gather, some of the data that they use now for 100-year floods is based upon a different climate than what we're experiencing. So that's always, unfortunately, we have to be suspect of those numbers. We have to also kind of assume that we're going to get more frequently. The other thing I was thinking is, I don't think those 100-year flood statistics include the ice flow dams that occur nearly every winter. You know, when in the spring, when the ice thaws and the water backs up, and you might remember, you know, the stories from the stockade being flooded because of that. I don't know if it'd have that much of an impact on this site itself, but that kind of annual flooding or maybe nearly annual flooding, it's not a nature thing. It's just with the Lock 7 being downriver from there. It's a natural occurrence, or I mean, it's an unnatural occurrence every year, and I don't know how much that would impact this site here, and nor would it get mapped probably for science at that point.
Yeah, just a reminder to everyone, the 100-year floodplain is actually the 1% annual flood chance. So you can actually have multiple 1% floods in a single year because it's just statistically
Oh, yeah.
the 1% chance. Sometimes people get flooded and they're like, oh, that was a 100-year flood. Now I'm good for another 99 years. And no, it's 1% chance every year.
If you scroll up to the east,
Yeah. And then also to Chuck's point, they do not model debris and ice. They just aren't able to put that in their modeling.
so
And so if they were to do a study, they would do a study on this issue. You'd want them to perform the calculations, the flooding calculations, right? And-
You'd probably not need to do that only because they're proposing to leave anything that's, you know, even close to the 100-year 1% annual chance of flooding out of the development. So if they were looking at trying to put structures in or near it, then that would be something we might want to see is like say, okay, we know that FEMA doesn't include ice in their hydrologic models. So, but we know that that's something that happens a lot. But in this case, because it's so far out of the floodplain, we probably wouldn't need to do that.
the one concern though, and we talked to the developer about the retention ponds. They're going to design them for 25 years. They should probably design them, you know, greater. Because even though the ice flow, if the river gets ice flow, the river rises, and there could be some backup. But even within the site, if you design the ponds for 25 years and you get 100-year rainfall, those retention ponds are not going to be adequate.
Which is also a 1%
Which
annual chance
Is
rainfall.
I think gets back to Chuck's comment.
So they would have to be made bigger. But how do you decide how big they should be made without doing some sort of calculation?
Oh yeah, you
You need the
model it.
calculation.
Yeah, you do model it.
Yeah.
So that would be something they should study.
Yeah. I
calculation.
circling back to these houses in the front, there is a non-jurisdictional wetland in that area that they'd have to be, they would have to develop. And then also the road, there's a really steep bank on the western side of Aqueduct, so you're down quite a bit. And the trolley comes on that curved part there, and there's some, there's actually, you can see where left Aqueduct Road, and there's some actual trestle there. But the way yeah, Laura is showing that wetland. It's right there. Yep. So the other thing is with the road coming in and they have to curve it, they're pushing those houses very close to the bike path.
Right.
Do you have any more questions,
You have
Larry?
any more questions?
Not on flooding, but on the other thing that I spotted in the EAF was where are the kids going to play?
Yeah, that's a concern we have as well. I did ask the
Laura mentioned
developer.
some small lot, 9 by something.
No, well, I asked the developer about the playground, and he said it was either 10 by 10 or 15 by 15, which is very small. And if you look at the standards for playgrounds, it's like 75 square feet per child. There are guidelines there, and they're more of like 100 by 30, somewhere in that. So, yeah, you wonder about that.
And there was a mention made about light pollution. There was something in the EAF about light pollution? Would they meet the I know there's a standard called dark sky.
Yeah, Ellen.
In DEC documents, we used to always
Yeah,
put in.
if somebody wants to jump in here, Ellen raised that issue, and that was an issue
do-
that she was concerned about.
One
Yeah,
thing
go
I
ahead.
remember about that is they said that unlike the first PUD, there's no houses directly across the river, so
I
it's
see.
not as bad. However, I think that it is definitively going to add to the light. And Ellen brought up the fact that we should make our standard recommendations on the type of lighting, and I think a lot of times the build nowadays has to use a lot of some of those standards. So I also recall, Dart, that lights on the sides of the buildings was part of the discussion.
Mhm.
And then there was a discussion of they were going to put kind of like a lamp post out in front of every house rather than
Street
top of the
lights.
buildings.
Yeah, they're not going to do
right?
street lights or
Yeah.
second, third story side.
At DEC, we approved the development that I was sort of intimately involved in called Bel Air, called Crossroads in Catskills. And I
Yeah.
remember they had all sorts of dark sky standards
Mhm.
built into that development. And that approval was still probably no, it may not be online, but but you guys may be ahead of that. I don't know. That was a while ago. And the other question I had is, what do you do about traffic? I mean, is there truly a traffic problem?
There are concerns about it. Laura, do you want to hop in on that?
Yeah, I mean, we did talk about this a little. They did provide a traffic summary data table. NISDOT sets a threshold for, it's kind of actually similar to the seeker process, really, but NISDOT sets a threshold of 100 cars in the peak AM and PM hours. And if you generate more than 100 cars, they require you to do a very in-depth traffic study. I don't think they reached the 100 cars in their AM, PM hours. So they are right now just providing the general traffic summary. I think a couple planning board members were concerned that adding cars to Aqueduct sort of trunk line that goes into the Rexford traffic circle could impact the Rexford traffic circle. I did get a summary of car accidents at the Rexford traffic circle from the chief of police that I will be sharing with the planning board. But I guess generally speaking, the traffic summary that was provided doesn't show a huge impact. Whether that in your mind, like, you still need to see the impacts to the roundabout, and I know we've had some conversations about how unfortunate it is that this project can really only have one main entrance on Aqueduct Road. It would be nice if somehow it could be formally connected to River's Ledge to diffuse some of the traffic across that main line. But if you traveling that road, you do see that, there may be some impacts. You could ask for more on the traffic study. It is just a basic summary at this point.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have a little bit of familiarity with traffic studies, and like they're all based on how many cars will, back up at a light at a particular moment, but then that's not necessarily.
Yeah, level of service.
Just-
Yeah.
I mean, that's just level of service.
Sight
In the
lines.
EAF handbook, there is I think we put in a guide to when to do traffic studies, but I was just wondering in general, the gentleman mentioned the traffic on Balltown Road and.
I think during rush hour, there's a fair amount of traffic on Balltown
Oh,
Road.
yeah,
And I
no,
think
yeah.
the developer estimated it was like 18 seconds waiting time to make a left-hand turn or a left-hand turn out of the site or into the site. And the number of cars that may make that is, I forget the numbers, but they're in there. And I think the concern is related partially to that because it's going to back up, stack up. I think the other concern is just the general flow with the traffic, and then the visible lines as this road comes up. This road is below, and then it comes up, and as it turns on to Aqueduct, I believe the planning board did bring up some concerns about the visibility.
Yeah, I mean, the River's Ledge has a pretty decent access
Yeah.
going into it. Is there a way for them to work together and to, I guess, I don't know, is there a way to have some sort of like shared access or?
That's a good question.
Throwing, I mean, I know in other developments, we've looked at shared access and of course they would be reliant on the other developer to give them shared access.
Mhm.
And they may not be able to get that, but I'm just throwing it out.
There is a parking lot on River's Ledge that's on the on the eastern side of the property, and there's an emergency access site there,
Yeah.
but there is a road there. There's power lines there.
Okay.
The other thing about this parcel is, and this goes down to the wetlands. Laura, if you could just put up the
Oh,
site again.
okay. I was trying to find the traffic generation tables, but I
It's
froze my
somewhere.
computer.
Yeah.
I will as soon as it stops being frozen.
Anyway, part of the challenge is when you look at the stubs in the development, you have the wetlands, you have the housing, and you have the stubs, and there's no turnaround whatsoever. So part of the challenge with this particular site is that the sketch plan and its footprint is integral to the, it's integral, and things are going to have to change because you need these turnarounds. So the question is how does that happen? So that's the general flow problem they have with it is you have these dead ends. You don't want like garbage trucks backing up, going backwards and stuff like that. And so it's hard to see how you're going to do it. And like in one place, the fence, the 25-foot buffer fence goes across the road, at the dead end where it dead
Yeah.
ends. So, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to double check before we moved on from the
Yeah,
traffic.
yeah.
So
no.
it adds in the PM peak hour 81 cars. It's getting close to the 100. And that's DOT's threshold. So local towns can obviously have different thresholds depending on, the road carrying capacity.
Can I just ask that? So it's 100 cars per some amount of time?
For the peak PM hours, yeah, because like if you drive Balltown Road at 11 o'clock or 11 o'clock in the morning or 11 o'clock at night, like
It's fine.
there's not a lot of cars. Like it's pretty free
What are they
flowing.
defined? Like how long is peak?
So peak PM is usually defined 4 to 6 p.m. It'll say in there, and then AM is usually I think 6 to 8 or 7 to 9. It's
And they
usually a
get
2 hour.
100 and that's amazing.
Nope. They use the uniform traffic manual, generating manual, the 12th edition, which actually uses national data to figure out what the trip generation is, but we've looked at local data and it's not usually that different. Based on the number of units, like each unit is averaged out. So like, a 2-bedroom unit generates like 1.7 cars, and then they just add that all together and round up. So the condos generate 71, and then the townhouses only generate 10, for a total of 81 in the peak PM hours.
I think if you scroll down there, Laura, it tells you they have the traffic on Aqueduct.
Yeah, so they looked at level of service. It will be hard.
Yeah, so you see right there is where the timing is. So they have AM peak hours, it's 14 seconds per turn, and then there's 19 seconds per turn on there.
Wait, and how many units is it again?
152.
So how are we getting only 81?
Yeah, because the units don't generate, because not every single person who lives in a neighborhood leaves at the exact same time.
Okay.
So it's just an average of national data. Like if you have 2 bedrooms, you're expected to have so many cars, and then whatever percentage of that car leaves.
One per unit. That's why I'm confused about these numbers.
It isn't usually 1 per unit. No.
Okay.
I wouldn't say there's anything wrong with that data. The only question is if 81 cars is a high enough threshold that you would want to increase a harder look at the traffic study. Like if you would want to see more because it's getting close to the 100 cars at the peak PM hours.
If you did, I mean, I'm just throwing this out.
Mhm.
This is not an informed statement, but if you did a traffic study, so what would it?
Yeah, it's a little bit like
I've
an
never seen
yeah.
one that actually
it's
results in anything.
well, it's a little bit like environmental impact statement. You could look and see if you have enough impact with your models, like, does it warrant a turning lane, which the developer would then pay for? Does it warrant, like, how much of the capacity of the Rexford traffic circle is that taking up? Does that warrant some kind of additional, mechanism at the traffic circle to help regulate traffic or something like that?
Right. Yeah, no, I take it
Upstream,
back.
downstream.
I was just sort of wondering.
Yeah.
Where that
Hey,
comes
Laura,
into
I
it.
just want to jump in for a second for Larry. Unfortunately, our microphones are not that good if you're not speaking directly into them.
Sorry.
So there's a real tendency to turn your head into the people you're speaking to, and the microphones don't pick you up very well. So
Okay.
you have to speak right into the
I
microphone.
just moved it right in front of me.
One of the things that we've had problems with Balltown Road in particular is like where the JCC is, there's people that make the left-hand turn
Right.
there and it really stacks it up. And, if you have a center lane there, the traffic still flows. You're storing cars before they make a turn.
Right.
We don't get a lot of complaints about Aqueduct Road, like having too many cars, like maybe going too fast, because it is generally like semi free flowing and kind of rural. So I think I don't get a lot of pushback from people who are sort of sitting in traffic on Aqueduct Road. Maybe on the rare occasion in the morning, probably, because if you're trying to enter the traffic circle from Aqueduct Road in the morning, all the cars coming over the bridge have the right of way. So that's a tough, there's probably some delay on Aqueduct Road in the mornings. But in the evenings, Aqueduct Road has the right of way and can make all the cars on Balltown Road stop. So
So any other issues?
Well,
Significant issues?
what I would propose we do is, I have a summary of what we've talked about and what our actions are. We did actually go through this, all the different items.
Well, I'm
before.
sorry I made you do it.
No, that's fine. So what I would what I would propose we do is we'll talk about each of the EAF issues in part two.
Okay,
And then I'll read our recommendation from last time, and then the justification summarized. We can add any additional information, or we can discuss it and we can go through. That way we're systematic. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes, let's look at the question.
Okay. So what we'll do is we'll go through the EAF Part 2 questions of potential impacts. And again, this is a type 1 action. So in the past, we have looked for mitigating actions in which we can remove some of these. A type 1 action, we cannot do a conditional negative deck. So it's either a positive deck or a negative deck. And the threshold is that a particular action may have a significant impact on the environment.
Laura, is this the first one since I joined last April that's been a type 1?
No, Kia was a type 1.
Okay. So is it
Um,
larger projects?
Yeah, larger projects are type 1.
There's a threshold.
Yeah.
There's other actions like an what is it? Unqualified. It's right on the tip of my tongue.
Unlisted?
Unlisted.
yeah.
Yeah. that's-
There's unlisted
Yeah.
and there's type 1 and
Type 2, which,
there's type 2, which are not subject to further review under secret.
there.
So
Okay, so any other questions on that? Okay. So for the first issue, impact on the land, will the proposed action result in a physical change to the project site? The answer we had was yes. The assessment was moderate to large, and the justification was the project involves extensive physical land disturbance encompassing between 12.5 and 20.5 acres of a 41.6 acre parcel. It requires clear cutting of a contiguous riverfront forest canopy. Grading will alter the natural topology of the site, which is shaped as a bowl or a depression, and it will likely require the addition of fill to remove the non-jurisdictional wetlands. Any discussion on that?
No, I still agree.
Okay. Okay. Impact on surface water and wetlands. And the question is, will the proposed action affect one or more wetlands or other surface water bodies?
Chairman, I just for Larry's sake, for number two is the impact on geological features. And I think we said there really aren't
No.
any
We based it on
unique
the
or
topology.
unusual
Yeah.
landforms. So that was a no to small impact. And then you're on to the impacts of surface water. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Laura.
Mhm.
Okay, so the question is, will the proposed action affect one or more wetlands or other surface water bodies? The answer was yes. The assessment was moderate to large impact, and the justification is the site encompasses 7 acres of federally regulated jurisdictional wetlands and 2 acres of non-jurisdictional wetlands. The layout forces residential structures and invasive pavement infrastructure directly adjacent to the town's mandatory 25-foot vegetation wetland buffers. This spatial crowding mimics documented code compliance failures at the town's nearby Harmon Grove development, where inadequate structure to wetland setbacks caused unavoidable residential encroachment, regulatory split rail fences removed, and buffer degradations. Furthermore, the plan mandates the total structural filling and permanent elimination of 2 acres of non-jurisdictional wetlands on the western portion of the site. The proposed stormwater retention system is adjacent to the jurisdictional wetlands and cause potential thermal problems, chemical, nutrient, and general potential to degrade the wetland hydrology. And we have that elsewhere, but we also have it there. So are there any comments on that one?
Not for me.
Okay.
Not for me.
Is this where we would put that we're concerned that we don't have the full water plan?
Yeah, we can put that.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's kind of the tricky part, right? Is we have to say now whether or not there are no to small or moderate to large, and without those calculations, like it's really hard for us to say that there'd be no to small because it's so close to the wetland. So I think that's why
Yep.
that's why we would say that there's a potential, if it isn't done correctly or we haven't looked at alternatives, that it'd be a moderate to large impact.
So the next one is impact on groundwater and aquifers. The question is, will the proposed action result in new or additional use of groundwater or introduction of new contaminants sources to an aquifer? And the answer is yes, a moderate to large impact. Again, this site sits on top of the sole source aquifer for Niskayuna. The justification for this is the entire 41.26 acre site is directly overlays the protected federal recognized sole source aquifer, which I just mentioned. The site's native soil features an exceptionally shallow seasonal high water table sitting 6 to 18 inches below the surface. The water table is trapped above a dense concrete like highly impermeable subsurface fragipan soil layer, which is located 18 inches located at a depth of 18 inches, forcing 10 acres of impervious surface over this hydrological sensitive area could cause substantial risk of impact to the wetlands and the hydrology. Any comments on that?
No comments.
Okay. Impact on flooding and drainage. Will the proposed action modify existing drainage patterns or alter stormwater runoff? The answer is yes. The assessment is moderate to large. The justification is eliminating 2 acres of natural depression storage wetlands on flat terrain with a 6 to 18 inch water table would likely negatively impact the land's natural water budget. This displacement will force incoming water from upstream tributaries elsewhere, potentially altering the shallow water table subject to the immediate area and the remaining jurisdictional wetlands to flooding, the habitat degradation. So the essence behind that is, even though they're not jurisdictional wetlands and they're not necessarily protected by the Army Corps of Engineers, filling them has an impact. And because there's ephemeral streams going into these wetlands and the water percolates out, if you fill them in, that water has to go somewhere. Any comments about that?
No comments.
Okay, number 5, impact on flooding and drainage.
Chairman, I'm just going to
Yeah,
go
go ahead.
go through the questions that we skipped just so the record is complete. For the impacts on air and climate,
Oh, yes.
this is a big one where they're talking about state regulated air emission sources or generating greenhouse gas emissions of over 10,000 metric tons. So that one is a no. Impact on plants and animals. We didn't identify this one as I would say this one, we would always mark at least small because of the amount of clearing and impacts that has to the flora and fauna. We didn't identify it as moderate to large, but definitely did impact some.
Yeah, I would like to make a note on that because we did raise the concerns about eagle nesting, but currently we think that they're further east, but we should check that.
Yeah.
And then the other concern we had was with amphibians, with all the wetlands. They are,
Yeah, I was going to say we should probably put the note about the amphibians here with the impacts on plants and animals.
And I don't know if it matters for the record, but, or in anybody's judgment, but there is actually a significant beaver house right there at the base of the trolley, one of the trolley trussels. Thank
Yep.
you. So it's not more than 15 feet from the shore of this proposed structure.
Okay, yeah, I think we should note that.
Are there any other comments about that?
Okay. And then,
Are we saying that the potential impacts to wildlife are significant, or what are we, or, I mean, not significant, but moderate to large or small? What are we saying?
we usually on this one mark small. We would never say none because there's always something.
You're taking
Yeah.
right, yeah. and I-
They didn't identify any endangered species. That is a large amount of clearing, so we definitely feel like there would be impacts to the animals, and maybe we could, like, we always make notes, like, if there's a beaver house, like, maybe we could see if they could work around it or
Right,
something like that.
okay.
Yeah.
I was just asking.
It didn't get flagged.
Right.
As having endangered species on site
Right.
per se.
Yeah,
But it's up to you guys. You can mark moderate to large on that one. if
So
you
what's
want.
the
I
pleasure of the
wouldn't do
board?
it unless you really feel there's a potential moderate to large one there. 'Cause that
Okay.
sort of opens up
A big thing when you go into the EIS.
Yeah, I actually think, well, I don't want to.
There's a small impact.
But I
definitely.
personally think it's small.
small, okay.
I mean, it's definitely going to relocate deer and they'll go into other people's lands and eat all their hostas. But yeah, without it being a very like unique habitat, it's probably impact on agricultural resources. I think we looked at the soils, or I did, and they're not like it's not a mega impact to the agricultural resources. I think that one was a no. Impact on aesthetic resources. That one didn't get flagged, did it?
Yeah, aesthetic resources, we were concerned about the river, the view from the river. And we talked about the buffer, right? And maintaining that buffer and the canal area as well.
So we would put small and note the concern about the
Small as it's currently, I think that concern could be larger if the configuration changes. That's something that needs to be protected.
the
And I don't know
scenic
if the
views from
lighting
the river.
goes into that as well, because we were concerned about the lighting.
Yeah,
across.
scenic. So scenic views from river, lighting, impacts.
And I'm just asking, but I don't have any opinion, but somebody mentioned that the houses would be right up against the bike path. Is that
Oh,
is
yeah, I
is
forgot to
a-
mention
I
that.
don't know, is that an issue, or, I mean, I use the bike path all the,
Well, I
Every
think
Could be.
the visual lands, this is where the aesthetic, I think there is an importance to have an appropriate buffer by the bike path and the canal as well.
what, I mean, like on River's Ledge, there isn't, it seems like there's a good distance between
In the bike path.
and the bike path.
Yeah, we actually worked with Rivers Ledge quite a bit. And they actually did elevations with us and buffers with that to minimize that impact. Now, they subsequently put some garages that were close to the bike path because they couldn't put garages in,
Underground parking.
underground garages as originally proposed because the water table was such a problem.
Yeah.
And like, part of the challenge with the sketch plan that we have with the developer now is we don't know if the parking is going to be at ground level or underground or some elevation, or there's basements or anything. That hasn't really been completely established.
Yeah, I mean, maybe if it's not an EIS issue, maybe it's just a.
I think we should put a note,
Yeah.
unless we want to raise that. I want to say something about the canal and the bike path.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's okay. I did forget to acknowledge we got a letter from the county of Schenectady, and they definitely had some concerns with the project and wanted to see more about how it impact the Mohawk Hudson Bike Hike Trail. I think that's things that they review as sort of the inter-community impacts. And
I think that played really a big part because they said, and I'm looking for, it's like 8 million uses along that bike path annually.
yeah, it's a lot.
Oh, yeah, no,
And I
a
know
lot of people in there.
from 2008, like Lions Park gets like 240,000 uses annually. So I would say, I think, Laura, my opinion is we should bump that to a
Moderate to large.
moderate to large. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think part of the challenge is we were focusing on
The drainage.
the
Drainage, yeah.
drainage and stuff. And would other people agree with that? Okay.
Yeah, I think that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, and I think that goes to the comment that we had in the minutes for June 3rd,
Mhm.
where we're talking about that we provide buffers for other properties, for adjacent property owners, and there needs to be a buffer between the canal and the residential area and the bike path.
Yeah,
That's not residential.
yeah. I mean, I think that this is really getting at that. I mean, would the proposed action be visible from publicly accessible vantage points like the bike path
Yeah.
year round and the Erie Canal?
I mean, I think at one point, we do talk about the visual impairment of the canal.
Yeah, so that's so 9 will
in the
change to
magnitude, so
moderate
it
to
should
large.
fit in- It should fit
Yeah.
in that. there.
And then 10 goes to the canal, I think.
Who owns the bike path?
So it's a patchwork of ownership in Niskuna itself. It's owned by New York State, GE, and the town of Niskuna. Underlying and landowner GE has a easement to the town of Niskuna for the bike path going through there. Down by
Well, where this is, this piece would be.
this piece, I believe, is owned by the. I always get it wrong. Like I think down by Lions Park we own it, and up here it's owned by the state, but it could be the.
This is a state park? Is
Huh?
the bike path a state park?
When it's owned by New York State, I believe, well, actually, even if it's owned by the town, it's regulated by the New York State Office of Parks and that OPRHP. It's like,
OPRHB.
yeah, it's like a really long name.
Because if it's state-owned land and it's obviously a recreation resource, there is a visual impact guide that DEC has long produced, which I helped write the last iteration of.
Yeah,
That might go into this
Yeah.
analysis.
even if we're the underlying owner, the Office of Parks and Historic Preservation, or what it's long, they still govern it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just throwing that out, that not that just it's something, it provides a way of analyzing
I mean, yeah,
the
I
visual
mean,
impacts.
we've kicked around some, like what an appropriate buffer might be. So like R2 zoning, the backyards are 20 feet. That's required lot line, right? And then if you think about a 25-foot buffer to protect it, so I think in some respects you want to minimize the visual impact of both the canal and the bike path.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you guys.
And you don't want that buffer to be part of the yard. That has to be a specific buffer,
Like a natural buffer area
Natural buffer.
or planted with.
I mean, 15
Native
feet, the backyard, I mean, that's right on the canal. That's
Right. Well, what you guys did next door was, in my opinion, it's really good. Like you don't feel when you're riding your
Riverside.
bike down
Yeah.
that path that the development encroaches upon the bike path. Yeah, I mean, you see it, but it doesn't.
Yeah, I would say that it needs to be minimized, the impact.
Yeah, and this one actually, I think the one side it isn't probably like because they're not, like, you can actually see this pond from the bike path, and National Grid owns this, which they do mow it because they have to maintain their underground lines. But, you know, on the north side of the bike path, this is pretty far away. I think where the visual impact is coming is with the townhomes from the bike path.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the southern part.
Yeah. But, you know, when you get to the canal, all of these buildings here and all of these buildings here are really close to this property line.
The you know, the challenge, like in particular with the canal, this is probably the only intact part of the canal, definitely in Niskayuna. And because when we looked at rivers at Ledge, the canal crossed the Mohawk River, and they tried to make the grade in Rexford to get on Erie Boulevard. So when you look at the neighboring site, Niskayuna Harbors, there wasn't a canal bed, it was built up. But when you look at the map where the canal was on this parcel, it was, you know, earthen around, and there was a path there. And then it turned into, you know, into Schenectady. But a lot of that stuff's all been built already. So, you know, this could be the only intact portion of the canal in Schenectady County. I don't know that for sure, but, you know, certainly from here to Erie Boulevard is. And I have something written about the historic.
Yeah, so that's number 10, impact on historic and archaeological research.
Are we good with that?
Yep.
Okay. All right, let's move on to impact on flooding and drainage. Will the proposed action modify existing drainage pattern, alter stormwater runoff? The answer is yes. Moderate to large impact. I think the justification here is eliminating the 2 acres of natural depression storage wetlands on a flat terrain with a 6 to 18-inch water table would likely negatively impact the land's natural water budget. This displacement will force incoming runoff from the stream tributaries elsewhere, potentially altering the shallow water table and subjecting the immediate area and remaining jurisdictional wetlands to flooding and habitat and wetland degradation, including the canal. Any comments on that? Okay. Impact on historic and archaeological resources. Will the proposed action impair the character or the quality of important historical, archaeological, or architectural or scenic resources? The answer is yes. And I think this is where the aesthetic and
Yeah, we talked about that here.
Kind of
Yeah.
confused about that. The assessment we came up with was moderate to large. The justification is the site represents an intact historic suite where Clinton's Ditch circa 1817 and the Large Canal 1850 and the Governor Theodore Roosevelt Canal circa 1900 elements sit directly adjacent to each other in their original protected berms, potentially untouched. The canal zone is a federal recognized national heritage corridor listed on the National Historic Register. The project proposes sitting a high-density housing development. Development blocks or houses 15 feet from the historic canal bank, creating a potential impact both physically and aesthetically on the canal area. Furthermore, the town would like to know more about the M. Brandt home site and whenever or whether or not it can remain intact. And I believe there was a well also there that was identified. And Chuck, you were the one that brought that map up and showed that site. It would be really nice. I've looked for that site. If you could,
Oh, sure. Yeah, of course.
if you could share it,
Yep.
that would be really helpful. So, any comments about that? Are we okay with that?
Yep.
Okay. Impact on consistent community character. The question is, will the proposed action create a material conflict with the architectural landscape? and
Oh wait,
scenic
Dart. There's a couple in
resources?
between there.
I'm sorry?
There's a couple in between there.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
So impact on open space and recreation. I know we've talked about the
Oh, yeah, we need to put that in.
the usability of the space that's left.
Yeah.
We've talked about that before. I didn't flag that as moderate to large, but it's definitely an impact.
Well, let's.
There's
talk-
kind of positives and negatives though, because the positive is that they would be giving the land along the river, even if we don't put trails on it, it would remain forever wild. And then I think that the thing that we've kind of struggled with is that the remaining land that isn't covered by floodplain or wetland or rain gardens is, especially between the buildings, is really limited and doesn't give a lot of like actual like green
That-
space outside of your house for people to enjoy.
Yeah, and we've talked about that, and I thought that we should make that large to moderate.
You want to make that
We're
one moderate
worried
to
about
large.
the encroachment and degradation of the wetlands.
That is covered in some of the other ones. So
And that's going to be covered in some of the other ones, but yeah. Does anybody have any comments on that?
Well, so you're making this moderate to large or small? to-
No, I actually think it's moderate, because one of the challenges that we have here, and this goes to the park land, most of the open space is wetland.
Right.
There's not a lot of active recreation sites for the people. There's spaces between the buildings, but the buildings are like 45 feet apart, so that's really hard. So I think the challenge is with some of the other developments is if you don't have areas, if you're too close to the wetlands with the buildings, or you don't have areas for people to play, they end up spilling over into the wetlands and the sensitive areas, and there's a natural degradation of that. And I think this also goes to a PUD in the sense that one of the goals is to provide active recreational areas. Preservation has been met, I think, of natural areas, but active areas haven't been really identified. There's no place on the site.
What is the town, and it's just a question, the town code provide? Like, I know site plan review says that towns, when they're approving a site plan review, I can't remember the exact words, but should provide for adequate playgrounds and
Mhm.
so.
there is the
What do
town
we
code
do
has
with these
percentages
Yeah.
and also like the multifamily residential code, does space per unit, but because the planned unit development is essentially making its own zoning, we could just look at those for guidelines. I think the developer likes to say that 50% of this land is undeveloped, which is true because they're not touching 7 acres of the federal wetlands, and they're donating, the area on the other side of the canal that's inaccessible and in the floodplain. So a lot of it does remain undisturbed. Where we're like honing in, I think, is that because it's such a site constrained parcel and you're pushing all of those footprints into a very like confined space, that that it's probably not, if you just look at the confined space, it's probably not meeting those codes. But the number, like the actual hard math numbers, when you are including all the wetlands and you're including the land that they would donate to the town, it's over 50% undisturbed.
But how does that, like, if you have 152 units and there'll be a fair number of kids in there, like, where do the kids just go to the wetlands, or do they, like, where I grew up, we had
Yeah.
little neighborhood, we had playgrounds, and even in Niskayuna you have that, and
That's really,
where do those kids go when they get home?
Yeah, I think that's a big question. If you look at the comp plan really focuses, and I'm talking about the 2013 comp plan, talks about parks and providing areas, and actually identifies areas where there are no parks. One of the challenges with this site is it's isolated, and
Right.
there's no place for kids to play. I
There's
mean,
the
there is a
place next
park
door.
on the other side of Aqueduct
Right.
up the embankment.
well, they are trying to make like the clubhouse with playground and then that path that goes along the pond.
Mhm.
But I think, one of the things that we have learned from developments that are very close to wetlands and wetlands buffers is that people still want places to drag their lawn chairs out and put their grill and just, have their kids right out in front of them while they're like still in the kitchen. So the proximity of these buildings and putting the rain garden between the buildings, yes, it helps with the stormwater, but now you don't have the green space between the buildings for people to walk. It's tight in there. That's one of the
So
issues.
what's our pleasure on that? I mean, I have something written up on that, just for something that needs to be looked at. How do you want to handle this particular question? We can come back to it.
Yeah, I'm torn on it. I don't know
Okay.
if it's I think they need to do something.
Yeah, well, it's,
But I don't know if it's an EIS, if it's a reason I would require an EIS or a reason, something that should just come through in site plan review.
yeah,
I don't know. I mean,
for the seeker, it specifically asks if there's a loss of recreational opportunity. And since this is not a park, I mean, it's a chunk of private land, even though it's inadequately marked as a park on Google Maps, or incorrectly marked as a park on Google Maps. But no, I think this is minimal because we're not, it's not a declared open space or a recreation site. But I do think the note about creating recreation for anybody who lives in that community should be noted, probably under maybe, I don't even know if it needs to be noted anywhere, to be honest with you, but that is really part of the design flaw, not necessarily a environmental impact.
right, not as a reason to require an EIS, but
Right.
as a site plan review flaw.
Yeah, so when we mark small, we still make our notes. It
Right,
just
yeah.
doesn't trigger the environmental impact thing.
So, but we have a thing that usable open space deficits, and we're going to ask the developer to look at that.
Mm-hmm.
And you could mark it monitor large, but you could say it's addressable by creating such a plan.
Yeah.
This is a problem that can be solved.
Yeah.
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 It's definitely a problem.
It's
that can
not
be
a
solved.
project killer, yeah.
Yeah.
So you could do monitor large, but just note your rationale for
Well,
it. And
But I don't think we could here because we're not taking anything away.
you're right, yeah.
We're not, there's
Yeah, it's the
nothing-
loss of
you know, yeah.
recreational opportunities or reduction
Right.
of open space.
This is, yeah,
mean-
it's,
Okay.
you're right. It's more of it's really a pure site plan review,
Mhm.
good
Okay.
planning issue.
I'm happy with whatever the board is.
I agree with Chuck. Like,
Okay.
for the question, it's minimal, but if we're gonna note it, that, while you're at it, that kind of thing.
Yeah, we can do that. We can put that in a note.
Yep.
Then the impact on critical environmental areas, we looked and this does not have critical environmental areas, so that one's a no. The impact on transportation, we have discussed that. There may be some impacts. I don't know if it rises to the level of moderate to large. We haven't really dived into the transportation that much, but
I think we should put a comment in there that it should be looked at from a site of view visibility perspective, and also from a potential turning lane.
yeah. I mean, the guiding, yeah, we could put those as notes, like for small, because the guidance on it is, will it exceed capacity of existing road network, which it's not going to do.
Yeah.
Will it create parking for more than 500 vehicles? It's not going to do that. Will it degrade transit? Will it degrade existing pedestrian bicycle combination? So I think we can make those transportation notes that we discussed, but it probably doesn't rise to the highest of levels.
I would argue though that 4 is a small because they're adding a crossing to the bike path.
Yeah,
that isn't
this
there.
is true. Potentially it does
And
degrade
you have
the bike path.
152 units that are now coming and going across the bike path, which already had a new crossing added. So now there's 2.
Hmm. This is true. It's introducing a conflict to the bike path that didn't exist before.
Right.
Have we had any problems with this River's Ledge, Laura, with cars and bikes?
I could ask the police. I did hear from Complete Streets that occasionally, and this is true of this one too. Rivers Ledge is stop controlled at the bike path. I am not sure how often the cars actually come to a full stop when they're entering and exiting Rivers Ledge, but because the bike path was there before Rivers Ledge and it is governed by the Office of Parks and Recreation and Historic Preservation, they required that the bike path has the right of way there. The same is true here. So technically, bikes don't have to stop, and cars are supposed to stop every time they cross that bike path, and does have stop sign. But I have heard from people that, like, especially on the second entrance where the bike path ramps up and there's like a wooden fence, that sometimes that wooden fence obscures the bikes that are coming up. Theoretically, that shouldn't be a problem because all cars are supposed to be coming to a complete stop. But my guess is that they're not all doing that, and that has caused some anxiety or maybe some close calls.
Yeah, I mean, when that question was written, it was, I think the idea was, in mind was that are they doing something to completely obliterate, pedestrian bike transportation? This is more of like a potential conflict with traffic, which seems like it can be solved the way you did it with Rivers Ledge.
But we should definitely note it.
I still think it has a small.
Yeah, we should note that.
Small impact,
Small impact.
but not, I agree.
Yeah, it should be noted. New bike path crossing.
And just to tack on to Dan's point, I mean, if there's if this thing does get built and there is such limited recreation, those kids are all going to go to that bike path.
Mhm.
And so you're pushing the recreation population on the site out into that area. So it could potentially increase the possibility of accidents.
Yep.
Especially if they have electric bikes.
Well, I mean, yeah, just go to
Oh,
Lions
yeah.
Park on a weekend, and it's great that the parents are teaching their kids how to ride a bike on the bike path, but it's crowded.
It's crowded.
So
Impact on energy.
Sorry, on the previous one, did we talk about
Oh.
Point E on the previous?
Oh, E. Oops.
I thought that was small, right?
Oops. Sorry, guys.
Is I think the
I
last
see it.
one.
The proposed
Well-
action may alter the present pattern of movement of people or goods.
Well, Laura, when you come back to the question, if you look in the EAF handbook, there'll be a whole discussion of that question
Mm-hmm.
and what it's getting at. That might help you.
I just think that's a small impact.
Okay, so I'll mark that one too. C and E. Okay. Impact on energy. I think we said we put our normal notes there for energy efficient buildings and solar and things like that. But generally speaking, this is a no. No to small with our notes about energy efficiency. Impact on noise, odor, and light. I think we put our normal thing here with the dark sky lighting, and that's the mitigation for it being a small impact. Okay. And then impact on human health. Yeah, it's not, it's not like a super fun site or anything like that. So it's also not an industrial use. So generally speaking, I think we didn't think there would be an impact to human health. Does anybody disagree? And then, okay, back to you, Dart.
mhm.
Thank you for the break. Impact on consistent community character. The question is, will the proposed action create a material conflict with the architectural landscape or scenic resources, or in sharp contrast to the current character of the area? I think the answer we came up with was yes. The assessment is moderate to large impact, and the justification is the project will clear cut acres of forest land on one of the final remaining contiguous wooded areas left on Niskuna's waterfront. Additionally, while the PUD code requires common open space, the developer's plan provides inadequate functional, usable recreational space for the residents. The public parking lot has a winding path along the private roads to get there, and public benefits of connecting to the bike path and the river need to be further explored. So there were a lot of discussions about the connectivity of getting residents back there. We talked about potentially putting a trail back there and a kayak there, and it's a very circuitous route. What do we feel?
I think it's definitely a yes to and a moderate to large.
Okay. Is everybody okay with that? Okay. Okay, impact on local planning and zoning. Will the proposed action be inconsistent with the local land use plans or zoning?
Wait, do we skip community character there, or is it?
No, we just talked about community.
Oh, that one was community.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so-
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, it's not quite in this.
You're doing great.
I'm in my
Doug.
own little world.
No,
It's
no,
been a
no.
long day.
No, you've been doing great. No,
Are you doing-
don't worry about us.
Are
You
doing the sub questions or you just?
So-
or you just?
I just had the overall.
Yeah, you might
You
want
want
to.
to, let's do the sub questions, yeah.
Okay. I think that the what you just said was consistency with community plans, though, because the language came right out of talking about the components and the current land use patterns, and whether or not it's inconsistent with local land use plans or zoning regulations, whether it's inconsistent with county plans or regional land use plans. And I did also want to note the county referral. I think I noted it
Yeah.
earlier. Had some concerns, and then I also received a referral from the Department of Transportation that had a number of similar concerns and some suggestions to help address those concerns.
Yeah, part of the county comments were that key elements would benefit from further refinement during the seeker review process. And specifically, they wanted to, how this view fit in with the context of adjacent development, including the Mohawk Hudson Bike Hike Trail, an evaluation of the usability of the lands conveyed to the town of Niskuna, given their proximity to the Mohawk River and the former Erie Canal barge towpath, opportunities to establish public space, direct, safe, functional connections between the bike path and the river, enhancing the inter-community access, a more direct connection to the trailhead.
That came from the county.
Proposal density and potential impacts relative to the adjacent wetlands. I think we've already covered that. They felt like the tree council should provide input, and they wanted a consultation with New York State DEC and FEMA concerning required environmental floodplain development permits. Preservation of a wood buffer to protect the existing natural resources, aesthetics, and shade along a portion of the Mohawk Hudson Bike Hike Trail that's currently used. So some of those fit in with 17. So are we going to go through these individually, or?
Yeah, so consistency with community character. Is the project inconsistent with the existing community character? Does it replace or eliminate existing facilities or areas of historic importance? Does it create a demand on additional community services like schools, police, and fire? Does it displace affordable or low-income housing? Does it interfere with the use or enjoyment of officially recognized or designated public resources? And is it inconsistent with the predominant architectural scale and character And is it inconsistent with the character of the existing natural landscape? So I feel like the only thing that I kind of flagged there is that I think we still have issues with like the turnarounds and stuff for large municipal vehicles, like the fire vehicles,
Mhm.
because there's still a couple dead ends there where they can't turn around. And then the character of the existing natural landscape.
Yep.
I mean,
I also think it may not replace existing historic areas, but it could impair them. We do have those concerns there.
Mhm. So did you guys think small with those notes or moderate to large on that one?
Which,
Well, I was thinking this was the moderate to large.
yeah,
Specifically around more really on kind of E and F. I mean, obviously it's not building on top of the historic structure, so it's not replacing or eliminating, but it's really the inconsistencies with the scale and character of that land. I mean, it's, as we said, it's turning what was a wooded natural area into a PUD to industrial park pathway. It's really removing the last piece of nature along that route, along that riverfront. So that's where I see the problem. I mean, it's just, yeah, I mean, I want to speak to the historic importance, but this clearly says replace or eliminate.
no, but we have other impacts.
Right.
So I would recommend we put it
I would
there.
definitely put them all there. But I want to be clear, they're not, they are not proposing to build on top of or destroy existing historical resources. Although like, you could argue the farm that was there and the well and it's definitely going. That would be going.
I think there was a recommendation to retain the well if possible.
Yeah,
And there's stone walls there too.
I think there's a stone foundation was marked up in one of the parts of the environmental assessment form. Okay, so that's 19 impact on disadvantaged communities.
You don't have that.
We don't,
We don't have that. So that's a no.
Yep.
And I'm sorry. I know that they made some changes, but I did not know that there were 2 new questions on here. Future physical climate risks. Never had to answer this one before. The proposed action is vulnerable to damage from projected 100-year flood or 1% annual chance flood. That's probably not true. Like we talked about, the flooding is all north of the canal bed where they're not putting any infrastructure. Is it potentially affected by sea level rise? That's a no. The proposed action may increase the vulnerability of human or ecological communities to the following: drought, temperature extremes, extreme storms, landslides, coastal erosion, stormwater flooding, or other climate or weather hazards. I would say that probably under there, to be consistent with what we've been talking about, recognizing that, the modeling is from past rain events and we are seeing them more significant, that the proposed action could potentially increase the vulnerability to stormwater flooding in this parcel.
I agree.
And here's also, I mean, again, to bring back in the canal berms, I mean, those with the exposure, with that resource being exposed the way it will be, there's a great chance that those berms will erode faster and abnormally, given the building that they're proposing here.
Mhm.
It's not coastal erosion. It's canal bed erosion.
Well, from the stormwater flooding.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yep. The
Yeah.
stormwater flooding could.
Right. Okay. Yep.
Well, and maybe some
It would-
extreme storms and winds, because once you remove those trees, like we saw that at River's Ledge,
Yeah.
the remaining trees aren't very wind firm, and so they can come down and do damage to things.
Yeah, if you remove a protective layer over anything and you expose it to pounding rain, it's going to erode what was protected. And so that would be my concern, is that we could be sitting here 30 years from now going, those berms were, I don't know, 11 feet. Now they're 7 feet. It wouldn't be that bad, but it could. You just don't know.
Did we go back to the consistency with community plans? Did we do that?
We did that.
17?
Proposed action is not consistent with adopted land use plans. Are the components different from or in sharp contrast to current surrounding land use patterns? Will the proposed action cause the permanent population of a city, town, or village to grow by more than 5%? Is it inconsistent with land use plans or zoning regulations? Is it inconsistent with county plans? Will it cause a change in the density of development that is not supported by existing infrastructure or is distant from existing infrastructure? I think in that one, the stormwater infrastructure, I think, is still a big question mark.
Yep.
And then, would the proposed action area characterized by low density development that will require new or expanded public infrastructure? Will the proposed action induce secondary development impacts?
What does the comprehensive plan say about this particular person?
Yeah, so the comp plan, in 2013, a lot of the land along the river was zoned industrial, and it wanted to look at ways to make it a recreational or just move away from industrial. I think so. The main goal of the comprehensive plan for this section from like Anthony Street all the way over to the Rexford Bridge would be to move it away from industrial development and towards recreation, or in this case, the underlying zoning, because a long time ago it was supposed to be a plan unit development, but it didn't go forward. So the underlying zoning here was R2.
So it's residential.
So it's residential.
Yeah, the other thing we said was that there was a plan, a river plan that was put out by Schenectady County, so included Niskayuna, Scotia, Schenectady. And
the
it
Mo-
talked about trying to encourage more uses along the Mohawk River, sort of mimicking what's going on in Western Erie Canal and Western New York. That was one of the reasons why we wanted to get the industrial out of there.
Yeah, and it
And
also
open up
encourages
the
like
access to the
access to the river.
to the river.
You want to make it more like near Rochester.
Yeah, I mean, but the canal doesn't.
Yeah.
The canals, we have the river
Yeah.
instead of the canal. But yeah,
So is it the pros action land use may be different or contrast to current surrounding? But you have River's Ledge there, so.
Yeah, it's not really in contrast
No.
with surrounding land use patterns.
So that would be like a no, right?
That would be a no.
Pros action will cause the permanent populous city town or.
That's a no.
No. Pros action is inconsistent with local land use. Seems like it's consistent.
I would say it's consistent.
Pros action is
yeah.
inconsistent with any county plans or the regional. It's
I think the note on that one is I think, the county has plans to continue to develop the Mohawk Hudson Bike Hike Trail. So they want the project to be maybe a little more integrated with the bike path.
I mean, that was part of the reason why there's a commercial space in River's Ledge.
Yeah.
Was to accomplish that goal. I think the big thing about this is that if we look in the 2013 plan, that one of the objectives in there is that zoning changes must establish development densities consistent with the capacity and limitation of the land character and infrastructure. And like, it's unclear right now if we put that type of density in there, the filling of the wetlands, and the impacts to the subwater infrastructure, the impacts of the development. Basically, this development, we're using PUD
Yeah.
to basically put every single structure we possibly can
Can on
squeeze
this piece
into
of
that
land.
site. So that's inconsistent with the comp plan objectives. And I think that's
Right.
where that comes, because really, if you look at the objectives of the comprehensive plan for 2013, we want communities that provide services for the local residents, which include open space, parks, and protects the natural features of the area. you
And this
know,
doesn't quite perform
And that
that.
doesn't quite perform that
Yeah.
in
So
particular. So that's
Maybe it's a
sort of my view on
moderate
it.
to large with that explanation, that very eloquent explanation that you just gave.
Okay. So we can fit that in there, maybe in the other.
Yeah, a lot of what we put ends up being in the other.
See bubble note.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because type 1 actions I think tend to be larger actions, but in Niskayuna we're so built out that smaller things are more impactful to us. Like, rather than the clearing threshold of 10 acres, like we were saying in Niskayuna, it should probably be like 2 acres. Because if you clear 2 acres in Niskayuna, like all of a sudden you change the water patterns everywhere, and every single neighbor that's adjacent calls. Like we don't even have, well, except for here, we don't even really have 10 acres left to clear. But
Well,
anyway, I think that's why we always end up in the other category.
I mean, secret is all contextual, so the reason the type 1 category was created, because seeker was, well, there was a couple of reasons, but one of it was implemented in phases in 1977, and they wanted to sort of have the first sort of the bigger projects that were significant by reason of size or where they're located, so they created this type 1 list. And then everything else was unlisted.
Mhm.
But it doesn't mean unlisted actions can't end up in an EIS. It just means that they don't have the same process, that they don't go through the same process as type 1 action. And so,
Yeah. We tend to have a lot of other notes, though.
yeah, no, in this year, you're probably going to have a lot of unlisted actions.
Yeah, we do have a lot of
Rather
unlisted
than
actions.
big land clearing kind of things.
But they do have a lot of impacts just because we're so built out already.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, in New York City, you could have something, you're going to have something on less land, but it could be.
Very
Could be
impactful.
100, a 50-story building.
Yeah. Yep.
So we are done with the questions. Does anybody else have any other comments? Any changes or anything? Okay. So what I'd like to do at this time is I would like someone to make a motion and second it for this project due to whether it has a negative declaration or a positive declaration. And then I have some statements to say afterwards. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I'll make the motion that this is a positive declaration.
Recommendation.
Correct.
I know this is silly, but can I just get a reminder of which is positive and which is negative?
This will have a significant impact, may have a significant impact on the environment
By saying positive.
by saying
It's actually the buzzwords are potentially significant.
Potentially,
person.
yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Good question.
And there used to be
Seconded.
a joker. significant.
Yeah.
Second.
Okay. Are we ready for a vote? Do we need any more discussion? Okay, all those in favor of a positive deck indicate by saying aye.
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 Any
Show
opposed?
the record that it's unanimous and there are no nays or abstentions. Okay, part 3, which we rarely ever do.
Oh, Chairman, I just wanted to mention before you highlight that I will just make sure to listen to our previous discussion,
Yeah,
just to make sure that we didn't miss anything from Ellen and incorporate it all into the.
what I would suggest we do is after you do that, send it.
I'll
back
send it out to
the
everyone and
board.
just make sure it captures
comment.
everything that we
So
talked about.
capture everything.
Mhm.
Okay, part 3, evaluation of the magnitude and importance of project impacts and determination of the significance. Okay, so the lead agency here, we're making a recommendation to the town board The action classification is type 1, as I mentioned before, and we just passed a recommendation of the issuance of a positive declaration, which we are basically saying that an environmental impact statement is required by the developer. We are not saying that this development can't ever be built. What we're saying is there are environmental impacts that require the developer to be looked at to go further. Okay? Is that
Yeah,
correct?
to be,
Okay.
to be further studied.
To be
in the
further studied.
context Of any,
Okay.
of a draft environmental statement.
Okay, so the Conservation Advisory Council has evaluated the potential significant adverse environmental impacts of the proposed Niskayuna Harbor Planned Unit Development, PUD. The CAC reviewed the site plans, updated the long form, and expanded the long environmental assessment form, EAF Part 1, and the TDE, Town Development Engineer Review Letters, okay? The CAC notes that the baseline mathematical ambiguity within the local PDU zoning text, which defaults to the property owner regarding gross acreage density calculations, does not override the town's statutory police power under seeker to regulate the actual environmental carrying capacity of the land. They therefore recommend to the town board that the project as currently configured has the potential to cause multiple significant adverse environmental impacts. A full environmental impact statement, EIS, is required based on the following reasoning and elaborations. First one is hydrology alteration, stormwater system risks under extreme soil conditions.
But I do think it's okay for you to summarize them.
I'm sorry?
I do think it's okay for you to summarize them. Do you want to read the whole thing?
We can put it in the record.
Okay.
What's the pleasure? Do we want to summarize? Because, okay. All right. Basically, in this, we talk about the shallow water table. We talk about the stormwater treatment basins, the stormwater storage ponds, and the potential impacts that we've talked about that, basically causing environmental problems for the trees and the wetlands and the potential canal bed and all related impacts of that. Next one is the microhydrology impacts of the wholesale filling of two wetlands. We talked about that. That water has to go somewhere, and then there's a potential that it's going to alter the water table, and by altering the water table and potentially redirecting this flow, it's going to destabilize the jurisdictional wetlands and cause the degradation of those. We also note that in order to fill that, we're going to have to put fill on that site, and to this point, we don't know what that fill is and what the impact of that fill will be. Structural degradation and the visual impairment of a registered historic landmark, and this basically talks about the canal initially, and that the 15 feet are not sufficient from a visual aesthetic impact. Also, the fact that 15 feet away, that when the buildings are built, there could be impacts to the walls. There's a physical risk. They're very steep. That could impact the canal bed adversely. And finally, that without a buffer, there's going to be residential impacts to the canal bed. They're unavoidable. We also are going to talk about the Mohawk bike path, and the environmental impact of both those are high, and the fact that the bike path is used is a big asset used by many people in New York State and outside New York State. Usable open space deficits and a mandatory buffer encroachment. we need to really look at this. This is what we talked about. We kicked around the 25-foot buffers. There's just not enough functional yard or useful space adjacent for the residents to use. And that could have an adverse effect on the buffers for the wetlands. And we have historic problems with that, and that's the Amador Harmon Grove development, where the split rail fences have been removed. There's clear natural vegetation that's been destroyed. There's dumping of yard waste and stuff into the wetlands. And we need to look at alternatives. With that,
And then-
go ahead, Laura.
Oh, and then just the other things that we identified tonight would be the impact to aesthetic resources, the river, scenic views
Yep.
from the river, lighting, scenic views from the Mohawk bike path, and the
talked about-
climate thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we can put that in. Compounding public safety and traffic infrastructure liabilities. We talked a little bit about this, the ingress, the egress from Mohawk, from Aqueduct. There's a lot of dead end roads, and there's no way to really turn around vehicles at those without impacting the wetlands. The single driveway is a concern, and just the whole way it approaches River's Ledge, the steep road grades, the steep slopes surrounding that, and that needs to be looked at more. And there were a couple other things that we mentioned too. We need to include them in there. We'll make sure we do. And then,
notes about energy efficiency, solar,
Yeah.
SSID, dark skylighting, and then the small impacts to flora and fauna. We just want to note
Yep.
if there's anything that can be done to mitigate that.
and then just to summarize this, the CAC recommends to the town board of the town of Niskayuna to find the Niskayuna Harbor PUD proposal as a potential to generate multiple significant adverse environmental impacts relative to the subsurface groundwater, non-jurisdictional wetland filling, historic landmark protection, residential buffer encroachment, and traffic safety hazards, and we'll add whatever else is that we identified in this conversation. The applicant has formally established that the project cannot sustain further housing density reductions or wider historic setbacks and remain economically viable. Because these significant environmental threats are structurally baked into the project layout, they cannot be mitigated via routes or post-zoning site plan adjustments. So basically, what we're trying to put out is the fact that the developer basically said that this is the site plan that they use. They can't really modify it. But the problem is, I think this board recognizes that a PUD could be appropriate for this site, but based on this particular site plan, there are just too many environmental impacts, and that the decision based on this site plan should have a positive effect. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes, thank you.
So the developer said they can't do anything different than what they're doing.
That's more or less the story we've gotten.
And didn't we have, I know the hour is late, and we should get out of here, but, I know the hour is late, we should get out of here, but, we had a discussion about them building higher, about creating more.
Yeah, we'd be interested in working with them on alternatives where potentially they had less building footprints, but more units and potentially another story so that they wouldn't have to lose units.
That would be like. an
But their
alternative.
their
Yeah,
footprints
yeah.
wouldn't be so close to the wetland buffers. It'd be something we'd be really interested in working with them on.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue is the footprints, but, it could be the number of units as well. But I think we've talked about some of the objectives of this PUD, and some of them are met, but
Right.
there are environmental impacts.
Okay, well, it just popped into my head.
No, that's good. And, okay, I am completely spent.
You are
Um,
well done.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. Can we skip the climate smart?
Yes.
Yeah, it's okay. We definitely should do it next meeting, but
Yeah.
we did good work tonight.
Okay. I'll second that motion.
Okay, Dan
All in
and Dart.
favor? Aye. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Dart. That was
Thanks, Clark.
that was fantastic.